Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity event. We're your hosts, AJ.
And I'm Bobby.
And this is episode 79, being recorded on Wednesday, February 1st. Happy February, airing on Friday, February 3rd. This week, we've got a packed show for you and a very special guest host. We'll be talking about Amazon's new play into pharmaceuticals, RX Pass. Speaking of Pass, we'll also be talking about Movie Pass, which is coming back. We'll be talking about infinite longevity and, of course, some tech billionaires, because what would this podcast be without a discussion of tech billionaires? Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, AJ. It's so good to be on the show. I'm so used to being on the other side listening. So it's really good to kind of step forward and be a part of the conversation.
Well, I am so happy to have you. Bobby is our marketing coordinator, so he's always on the podcast. He's always behind the scenes. He'll pop in, offer some commentary. He helps us find great topics to talk about. So excited to dive into it live with you today. And speaking of diving into things, let's get right to it. We've got Amazon diving into the subscription pharmaceutical business with the launch of RX Pass, a $5 a month subscription for Prime members for all you can eat generic drugs, covering about 80 conditions that are, I don't want to call them like popular conditions, but essentially, 80 conditions that affect a lot of Americans where there are affordable generic drugs here. This was a TechCrunch article. I love this. I think this is really cool. Any initial thoughts from you here?
Yeah, I think it's amazing. It's only been a few years since I even learned that Amazon had a pharmacy. And ever since then, it's really been no turning back for me. In fact, a lot of times, even without this RX Pass, which I just learned about in preparing for this episode, at least half of my own prescriptions end up being cheaper through Amazon savings without even applying my insurance to them. So that's great. I think Amazon's doing great things in the pharmaceutical space. And I think that that's definitely something that we can be glad about, aside from the typical talking points on Amazon being a little bit too big for its proverbial britches.
For sure. And we can list all the cons about, is this a good idea for private companies to get into public, but the pharmaceutical company is mostly private. So, Amazon, which has really mastered, the distribution and the infrastructure side of getting people things, for a lot of the elderly or, lower income families who don't live near a Walmart, or the nearest Walmart is 40 minutes away. What could be better than saying like, hey, I need this thing every month. It's what keeps me alive or keeps me sane. There's a lot of great antidepressants that are generic that are affordable. So, making these widespread, available, and affordable, I think is a plus for me here. Here's a question for you. How much, without looking at the spreadsheet, how much do you think Amazon Prime costs per year?
I'm trying to remember how much I pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it like 110, 120,
okay,
something like that?
You're close. It's currently $139 a year. And I was just curious. I was like, $5 a month is awesome. But obviously this is a play to get not current Prime subscribers to become Prime subscribers. And my guess, without looking before, was $75, because I think that's the last time that I paid for my own Amazon Prime. And now I use my husband's, and then I use the Brooklyn FI, Amazon Prime account.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be on Amazon if I wasn't using Prime. They have disincentivized using the site without the Prime service, without that subscription. So you might as well. You'd be better off to have Prime.
For sure. So Amazon's been trying to get into healthcare for a long time. It makes sense. Just in terms of like Amazon's growth, this is a new thing that they've been trying. They just rolled it out. So obviously they've been working on it for a while. Not a ton of shareholder value added over the past 2 years. Amazon stock price is basically back to where it was pre-pandemic, but I could see this, as a big game changer. I'm sure there are downsides we're not thinking of. Do you have something called Capsule in your neck of the woods? Have you heard of that?
No, I have not.
So Capsule is my pharmacy. So when I need a drug from a doctor, you go on the app. Their customer service is amazing. This is not an advertisement for Capsule, but I truly just love this product as someone who has a ton of health problems. And you chat with them and you pay for the drug, and then they send a bike messenger to your door. Typically, you can schedule the delivery. So it's typically that day. It can be as fast as like 2 hours later. And it's just amazing. And not only that, but like if you like need a referral for something like 6 months later, they will actually get in touch with like a real pharmacy. Like they'll get in touch with your doctor to get your prescription, and they just have great customer service. So I love Capsule.
It's really cool.
Yeah. And it's not just for generics. So yeah, I love that Amazon is also potentially, because they have the scale, maybe they'll be one of the first other private companies to put pressure on pharmaceutical companies to bring drug prices down, when all signs point to the fact that they should keep them high. What else we got here? Speaking of reaching higher prices, or it's a terrible segue. What's this next article we've got here?
So SpaceX is moving one step closer to making science fiction a reality with Starship testing. What we're talking about here is, this is really, I see this, AJ, as a liminal moment for space travel. They're having what's called a rehearsal launch for Starship, and this is really this has been the impetus for the existence of SpaceX. So like it's a huge moment, and what they're going to do is basically they're testing like orbital travel, and I think that's a precursor to interspace travel, and that's going to be really cool, like commercial interspace travel, and so that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I think I love science fiction as much as the next person. Well, probably more than your average person. Just this idea that, say what you want about Elon Musk, but the idea that you could ferry people from Earth into orbit and then to Mars or whatever other planets we might be wanting to visit over the next, couple decades. Very cool move. It seems like they're waiting for approvals from the FAA. Like it's still not like quite ready to go, but basically they're like, assuming no roadblocks like weather and the FAA and it blowing up, like we might be ready to go in March.
So maybe that's the location for our next BKFI retreat.
Oh, the SpaceX or Mars?
Yeah,
Mars.
Yeah.
What's your vibe on space travel? Interested, or are you staying planet side?
It's tough, AJ, because before I joined your company, I had never flown before. And I swore to myself I never would, because I was mortally afraid of flying. And we just got back from LA a couple of weeks ago, and that was an amazing experience for me. I obviously survived. So, or at least in this timeline, if we're talking science fiction, I did survive.
In this version of reality. Yes, you did survive.
That's right. And so, it was great. I wouldn't want to rule it out. My grandmother, actually, she was not quite on her deathbed, but she was sick, and she was telling me how interested she was in space and how she always wanted to go like to the moon and kind of see Earth from that perspective. And I think if I had the opportunity to do that just in her honor and her memory, I would give it a thought.
Cool.
I would give it a consideration.
That's such a great reason. Yeah, it's like Mars from Memorial Day weekend, anyone? But no, as much as I love science fiction and space, and as much as I am obsessed with NASA and all things interstellar, I really don't have any desire to get in a spaceship and leave Earth. That may change in my lifetime, especially if my life gets extended, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I don't... Space travel, excited about it, want it to happen, but not for me at this moment.
I mean, I won't be on the first passenger list for sure, because I think that's going to be kind of a bumpy ride. But once they get it streamlined,
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite movie or book about space?
So it's, okay, the only thing I can think of in this moment is actually a video game, and it's called Anno 2205.
Oh, okay.
And you end up colonizing the moon and getting, you're harvesting helium-3, or harvesting something to create helium. No. Anyway, it's about helium-3 and getting that. And it's obviously an extremely expensive endeavor, but like, it's just gorgeous. And you're basically creating this industrial colony. And I just love it. And of course, the graphics are gorgeous. The music is spectacular. So, I mean, if they have good music in space, I think I'd be happy, which could be actually a good segue into the next topic about AI creating music.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, so Google, not to be outdone by OpenAI and ChatGPT, is working on its own form of artistic expression through AI. So they've got it writing music and producing pieces. I have listened to some of them. Have you had a chance to check any of them out?
Not this particular version. I've heard AI generated music in the past, and yeah, it's fine.
Fine is a good word for it. I mean, I would say, for some, I think it might trigger some like uncanny valley vibes for sure. But it also kind of like, especially like the kind of, what would you call it? Like lounge music, like that's just kind of a vibe, like setting a vibe. Like it would be good to work, good music to work to.
My friends and I call that Ace Hotel Lobby Core. The Ace Hotel is a particular brand of hotels that tries to be, it succeeds at being cool, but there's a very like distinct like, oh, do I know this song? It's kind of cool, but also this music kind of sucks and it's kind of just in the background sameness. And I always thought that was sort of where AI, if AI was responsible for music, that's where we would end up.
Yeah, that would be awesome for hotels, I guess. Or
yeah,
certain
exactly.
ones.
Exactly. Speaking of hotels, we have some new Airbnb laws impacting home buyers and home investors, specifically in upstate New York. We've got this article from Country House Realty. I've actually found this on Instagram. And essentially, it's a warning to prospective investors, specifically in upstate New York, but also I think across the country and across the world about local laws, state laws, federal laws not being able to get it together to block Airbnbs, but at the local level, making it difficult for homeowners who aren't living in the area to rent their homes to Airbnbers. I don't know. I have two different conflicting opinions on this one. Any strong opinions here?
So my potentially hot take on this is that it's anti-small business and anti-tourism. Mm-hmm. So what we have is like the Airbnb community, like these homeowners, these property owners that are opening up their spaces to be used by these tourists, by these travelers. They're creating opportunities for people to come and stay in areas and experience communities and towns and things that they might otherwise not be able to for whatever reason. Some people have unique circumstances and parameters around their travel, such as including like their pets coming with them, like there may be issues with that, or like finding a hotel that's available or something like that. And I think that you're really kind of marginalizing them and making the locality less appetizing, if you will, for them to come in and to visit, because it's becoming more restrictive for them.
Yeah, I hear that, but my counterpoint to that is that most Airbnbs that I've stayed in are clearly just Airbnb farms. That was an investor from the outside who doesn't live in the area. And I think a lot of these laws are actually very specifically there to reward locals. So it's not limiting if you live and work in that, or live in that town or township or county or whatever, if the laws apply to you, can rent out your Airbnb all day long. It's just if you're not a resident, or you're a multinational corporation who's bought up 150 properties in this one township in upstate New York, those are the people that are going to be limited. They're actually kind of an interesting way to limit this is they're actually only issuing a certain number of permits. So like in one county, there are only 100 permits available for outside investors to buy up. Obviously, that becomes a very hot ticket. So I would imagine there might be a secondary market for those permits to rent out commercial rentals. I think the one thing we always want to talk about when we talk about commercial or rental real estate in general is, and I always like to dispel this myth of, I really want passive income, right? I want to own a rental property and I want passive income. There is nothing passive about letting strangers into your house and managing a business. That is a very active type of investing. So I always like to have that kind of caveat when folks say, oh, I'm going to buy this vacation home and it's also going to provide some passive income to me because I'm going to rent it out. So I always like to say, if you're going to rent it out, that is not passive income. That is a full-time job that you are taking on, which is cool if being a landlord is something you want to do. Our listeners know that we're pretty anti rental property on this show. Let's see. Oh, let's move on to the guy who wants to be 18 again. This guy.
Yes. So it's interesting. This guy's like 45. What was his name? His
name is Brian Johnson.
Yeah, and he is wanting to ultimately have, without being too specific, all of the body parts of an 18-year-old at the end of his work that he's doing with all of these doctors.
Oh, now I get it. Okay. I see. Okay. I see what's happening here.
The article was oddly specific in that way. Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
All right, let's get some quotes from this article. So there's this guy, Brian Johnson, who's basically he's worth like $500 million. Oh, sorry, he's a billionaire. My mistake. He is a billionaire. He is in his 40s and he wants to regenerate his body basically to go back to its state as an 18-year-old. So he has a team of doctors. He's spending millions of dollars and hours trying to essentially reverse the clock and bring the quality of his organs, blood, etc., back to his, I guess, idealized 18-year-old self. So one thing that struck out in this article was that his whole medical team is led by 29-year-old regenerative medicine physician Oliver Zollman. 29, like leading a team of of genetic experts. Like, I don't mean to be ageist, but like I didn't know shit at 29. Like, shouldn't we maybe have someone with a little more experience in the research field? Just a thought.
His age might actually be the selling point for that. Just maybe by being around him. This guy feels like he's like going to become younger through osmosis or something. AJ, would you turn back the clock for yourself if you could?
Well, so my usual co-host Shane has gotten me into this podcast called Lifespan, which is all about reversing the aging process. And I'm totally on board with doing sensible, good, proven lifestyle changes to extend your life, right? Sure. Eat healthier, cut out, a lot of red meat, cut out a lot of sugar, do your regular exercise, like kind of like the common sense things that doctors have been telling us since World War II, basically. Like, we have a lot of studies that prove that's good health. And now we're seeing these studies done on mostly mice and other animals that actually, yeah, if you do these things in a prolonged fashion and also add in some supplements and some, other hoo-ha, you can actually reverse the aging clock. So I'm kind of into this. I would add a few more years. I go back and forth between wanting to live forever and then wanting to just like call it quits after a certain I'm done. I'm good.
I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on the quality of life and like, am I going to lose the people that, I'm big into relationships and so like my family and everything. And so if they're not going to be here, then I wouldn't want to be, because I think it would just be kind of a sad existence. So.
I mean, this theme is explored so much in all the fantasy and sci-fi that I read. Like, this is the theme in Lord of the Rings with Aragorn and Arwen. This is the theme in Twilight with what's-his-face and Bella. Like, do you want to be a vampire alive forever if the love of your life is only going to be around for, 1/100th of your entire existence? So I don't know, TBD on that one. So also when I hear about things like this guy who wants to live forever, like, I don't know, I feel like karma or irony or whatever you're going to want to call it. Like, this guy's going to get hit by a bus at like 43 and like end up in an Alanis Morissette song. Like, I feel like he's going to he's going to do all these things to like reverse the clock, and then some horrible tragedy is going to happen to him. And
probably. Well, no, it's, probably like the story behind the story is that he doesn't actually want to be physically 18 again. He just wants to have the mind of an 18-year-old again. And like, that's not jaded and not, staring down the barrel of the end of his life or something, even though your life is hardly half over at 45. But anyway.
Wow, that's deep. Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
I didn't even think about it that way. Like, yeah.
Speculation time with Bobby.
I would love to have my consciousness of an 18-year-old of like, wow, I can do anything. The world is my oyster. Yeah. But also, I don't know. I prefer my 34-year-old brain and outlook to my 18. I was kind of a mess at 18. That's a hard time for some people.
Yeah. 20s was about growth for me. And what's that saying? Like, nobody likes you when you're what, 23, 22, something like that?
Oh, is that a saying?
I don't know. John Owens was saying it the other day during a meeting. But I have heard it before for sure. But the point is that no, I mean, I'm quite happy to be 33 and have the consciousness of a 33-year-old. So,
yep. Just a quick little anecdote. This was reported by the Daily Mail. So, kind of a tabloid. But they're apparently Brian Johnson, the guy who's 40 and wants to be 18 again, one of his romantic exes is brought him to court because allegedly he dumped her and reneged on some payments because she got sick with breast cancer. And there's a quote here from the lawsuit that said, saying she had become a bad deal and a net negative for his life due to her illness and treatment. So, say what you will. I didn't confirm this source, but there is an open lawsuit against this guy for, cutting and running after someone was diagnosed with a disease. So
if we could get like a chart right about here, and it's like karmic value and it just drops, it tanks
exactly.
right
That's
there.
what I'm saying. This guy's got some karma coming his way. Anyway, Look, I think this is cool. And like in the broader, like thinking about reversing age, like right now, one of the best businesses to be in is cosmetic surgery, right? Or anything that can help us look and feel younger. So, on a positive side, I do commend this guy for experimenting on himself. It's really hard to do human trials and get human trials approved and do meaningful long-term studies of trying to eat better and what would it look like to reverse the clock. So maybe on the positive side, I think this guy's taking a wonderful risk for science and humanity in general. And hopefully there's some great positive research that can come out of this little fun experiment led by the 29-year-old doctor.
Ageism.
Oh boy. I know. I'm an ageist bitch. Speaking of ageism, just a quick side note. I was just at a conference this weekend with a lot of accountants, and we talk about chat GPT all the time on this podcast, and maybe that's the world we live in because we work in tech basically, and it's all over the place, and we're youthful. But I had to explain what chat GPT was and what OpenAI was to at least 3 times during the weekend, and fine, maybe you're a few generations older or a generation older, and it's not in your wheelhouse, but like, come on, guys, like, read the news. Like, this is like big, huge, like giant leap forward in science and the way that the world is going to work. And I don't know, there were a bunch of elderly folks there who just didn't know what it was. And it was surprising. That was a surprising thing to me.
That is surprising. I mean, ChatGPT has been so prolific. I mean, there has been no avoiding it for me at any turn. Like, whether I'm having conversations with friends, family, whatever, they've all heard about it. Some of them have played around with it. Some of them are using it to create tweets for themselves, like write 20 tweets on a topic, and then they've got content for 20 days. So, like, that's really cool.
Yep. It's funny that we all live in our own little bubbles, right? And it's like, I just assume everyone knows what this is, but I had a few people be like, what are you talking about?
I think the people at that conference should have known, though, right?
Yeah, these are business owners who run very successful accounting and investment advice firms, and it just surprised me. And it just was a further reminder that we all kind of, even though the internet is such a wide open place and the world is getting smaller, like, we still live in our own little bubbles.
Yeah.
What would you like to talk about next?
Okay, so I definitely want to talk about the fish that took control of a YouTuber's Nintendo Switch during a live stream. So these fish, I definitely want to say like that these fish obviously knew what they were doing. I hopped onto one of the live streams last night actually, and watched them play Pokemon, and within a minute of watching, this fish encountered a Golduck, and then defeated it within like 30 seconds. And there was something so calming about it. Like, it was just like, this is next level. This is it. But so what the fish did, so they somehow...
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you just back up a second? It's literally a fish? I didn't read this article.
It is it's absolutely a fish. So let me set it up for you.
Like literally a fish in a tank?
Yes.
Connected to a neural network? Like, what's happening?
No. So there is this kind of directional mapping that's done over the side of the aquarium. Okay. And so where the fish swims to, it directs, it is interfacing with the gaming system as though we're using a controller, right? Mm-hmm. And so what will happen is this guy sets up these live streams and then walks away. And so they're just doing their thing, making him money, which is spectacular. But then they accidentally... Now that's
passive income. That is passive income.
But then he, he obviously left them alone at some point, and they got out of a game by accident. That's not meant to happen. And they got back to like the home screen, and they ended up going in. They charged his credit card for something. Well, first they displayed his credit card information for the viewers, which was fun.
Right, because it's a live stream.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
And so of course he doesn't know this is going on. He's elsewhere, so he doesn't know until later, you know. And they managed to charge his card. They bought a new game, I think. They bought something which also generated an email and sent to him. So they're getting a lot of credit for things that they did during that wild and crazy night, but he hasn't fired them clearly because they're back to the task. I will say I had a fun idea for the liquidity event. I think we need to incorporate fish into the liquidity event. And doesn't that sound like the natural evolution of the show anyway?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. Well, as the person on the liquidity event team who is most likely to remain in one place for more than 3 months at a time, you're getting some fish, Bobby. I think that's what we're I think that's what we've
They'll be right behind me. Absolutely. Pushing buttons, setting off sound bites and things like that. I know
give the fish the control of the sound.
They would abuse Shane so badly. He hates the soundboard.
He hates it so much. I love it. Okay, so two more. All right, I have to talk about this article because I just found it so funny. There's a Business Insider article about recession brunette, which is basically like makes sense, right? When you're looking at all your expenses, like, hey, if we're heading into a recession, cash might be a little bit tight. What are some things that are maybe not necessities to stay alive, such as food and shelter and maybe gas to get to your job? Well, maybe if you were formerly brunette and dyeing your hair a lighter color, that's pretty expensive, right? I have fantasized many times about going blonde, and every time I do, I'm like, I don't have time or money to do this maintenance. So I'd rather contribute to my IRA than go blonde personally. But I know that this is an important, piece of folks' identity, right? This is like how you look and how you present to the world. So I don't know, thoughts here on cutting out expenses that are part of your identity during a pandemic.
Actually, this is my pandemic and recession look right now. So I used to be platinum blonde. No, never. I think. Actually,
you're a recession brunette? Oh, good to know.
Yeah. No, I mean, like managing these roots while blonde would be insane because the hair is very, very dark. It might look white for those of you on YouTube watching, but it's extremely dark.
It's brunette. This is a brunette podcast. We have a blonde co-host sometimes. Actually, we have two.
Is it natural? Is it a natural blonde?
Yes.
I'm kidding.
I think no, Shane. we exposed that Shane's a brunette and this just dyes his hair religiously and no one has ever seen his roots.
The recession hasn't caught up to him yet. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Amazing. He's still living in his blonde bubble. Yeah, for sure. It makes sense, right? If you got to cut some expenses, then so be it. Okay, last thing I want to talk about. MoviePass is coming back with a vengeance. Did you ever use MoviePass when it was a thing? Was that 5 years ago?
I had come so close to signing up for the service. I was really stoked about it. I was like, this is cool. I'm going to start going to movies all the time. And I did something to initiate something with an account somewhere along in there or something. But then it just dropped off the radar and I never heard from it again. And I think that's what happened with the service in general. It was just never heard from again, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was so cool when it came out, which was like, hey, you like going to the movies? Hey, movie theaters were struggling a little bit. Let's bring, everyone else is having such great, economic success with subscription revenue. So why don't we bring that to movies? We already have the theaters. We're already showing the movies anyway. Let's fill them up and let's try to take the gym model, which is sell a bunch of memberships and hope nobody shows up. Unfortunately, they had priced the subscription too low. So they got overloaded. The service basically shut down. But now they're back. They figured out their pricing. Movie theaters are coming back. It's we're coming out of the pandemic. And I am rooting for MoviePass. I want this to work so badly. And you know what? What business hasn't struggled with how to price their services? So I'm glad that they're coming back. I think this is a great idea. They already have brand recognition, right? People remember MoviePass, so it's not like this new thing coming out of nowhere. So right now, I think the basic plan is $10 a month, and you get it's a credit system, so it's not fully unlimited. And they're basically rolling it out slower, managing demand, getting to know their customer before turning it on full blast. But I'm rooting for them. I love the movies.
I mean, you've got to love an underdog story, and and I have to say, it's going to be really good for the meme stocks. I know that they don't get a lot of love on the show or in general.
No, they do not.
But anybody that invested in AMC or something, they might be kind of excited, right?
Of course, right. AMC is going to have their comeback thanks to MoviePass.
That's right.
Well, yes. Thanks to you, Bobby, for stepping in as my co-host. This has been The Liquidity Event. You can always email us at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. Leave us a voicemail at memo.fm/theliquidityevent, and we will play it on the air. Show notes, as you know, can be found at brooklynfi.com/episode 79. Stans can leave us a review if they want to be weird about it. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Farewell.